Divorce is one of the most challenging transitions in life, and without the right guidance, it can quickly turn into a disaster. Welcome to Dodging Divorce Disasters, the show that helps you navigate the legal, financial, and emotional pitfalls of divorce before they happen. In each episode, I sit down with a top professional in the divorce community to hear real-life war stories, cautionary tales from the trenches of divorce. But I won't leave you with just the horror stories. The experts will break down exactly what went wrong and, more importantly, how you can avoid making the same mistakes. Whether you're in the early stages of separation, deep in the process, or supporting someone through it, we are here to help you move forward with clarity, confidence, and fewer regrets. I'm your host, Lori Hawkins, and I am a local expert in divorce real estate. I am so excited to be sharing these incredible professionals with you. Let's dive in. I am so excited today to have Irene King here with me. Irene, honestly, I tell you this all the time. I don't believe in reincarnation, but if I did, I would want to come back as Irene King.
So sweet, Lauren.
I don't, I've tried to think about how we met. I honestly, since I became a CDRE, you have just kind of always been in my circle. So I don't really know how we were introduced, who was the person that gave me your name to reach out to, but I'm extremely grateful to that person. And I do know that you were one of the first people to give me a case, refer one of your clients to me to work as a CDRE, and I have just adored you ever since. So,
Thank you, Lori.
yes,
I'm
yes,
really
we're so
grateful and
glad you're here.
excited.
Well, okay, what I want to do is just let you introduce yourself to the audience that may be listening to this. Tell us what you do, what your company name is, where you practice, and that type of thing.
Okay, I am an attorney. I have been practicing over 20 years, and family law is all I've ever known. I spent the first decade of my career as a litigator. I tried any and every kind of case you can imagine, from very simple child support matters to very complex equitable distribution trials. I tried international child abduction cases in federal court for a period of time. You name it, I tried it in a courtroom. And I considered myself a gladiator for a long time who fought in court with the most prepared team and the best legal arguments. And I considered that to be my job. And I transitioned out of litigation completely in 2015 after I had an experience that really changed my mind about the kind of attorney that I wanted to be and how I wanted to show up in the world, not only as a person, but absolutely in my career. And I'll get into that a little bit later. But I started my own firm, King Collaborative Family Law, in 2015. And since then, I have not stepped foot in a courtroom. I don't try any type of case. I am a problem solver, creatively work with other professionals within the collaborative divorce process, and I'm also a certified family financial mediator. So I mediate for couples going through a divorce who do not have attorneys, but I also mediate for couples who have attorneys and find themselves in a high conflict divorce case and want a way out. So I help guide them out of that quagmire.
Okay. Now, do you just work within the Charlotte area or?
I work within the Charlotte area. I work up in Lake Norman. I work all over the state because I have a virtual practice and a office, so I can work anywhere and everywhere
That's
with
great.
North
That's great.
Carolina,
So
of
you can
course.
do things like this virtually too, through Zoom and things like that.
Absolutely.
That is fantastic. That is really good. Okay. You do have kind of some niche areas, right?
Yes,
Even
absolutely.
within this. Explain those to us. Tell us what those are.
So, in terms of being a collaboratively trained attorney, I became trained in the collaborative divorce process, I'd say over 15 years ago. Um, and over time, I took advanced trainings. I became steeped in every kind of conflict resolution process under the sun. And I really gravitated towards the collaborative process. So I try to educate as many clients and as many people out there in the community as I can about this healthy separation and divorce process so people will consider it when they are hiring an attorney and embarking on this path of divorce and separation and moving to a new chapter in their lives. So that's really my specialty, and I enjoy it very, very much. And I appreciate other professionals like you who are so passionate about it.
I am. When I decided to expand my expertise within the divorce field, I wanted to be trained in the collaborative divorce process. Now, I am not an attorney, I'm a certified divorce real estate agent, but I wanted to know more about the collaborative divorce. And you were the person that I reached out to say, where do I start? How do I get trained in this? Because I find it very fascinating. I find it to be a great alternative to litigation, and it allows the family to make decisions as to what's best for their family and not put it into the hands of a judge. That's where I come from on this. So yeah, I totally agree with you on that. Let me ask you, do you get a lot of people that contact you just to be an attorney, but then after telling them about the collaborative process, they're like, yeah, we can do that. Let's go that route. Does that happen?
Yes, absolutely. From day one in starting my firm in 2015, I put myself out there as a collaborative attorney. And one of the reasons I named my firm King Collaborative Family Law is so that people will inquire, what is collaborative? What does that mean? And from that starting point with any and every client I encounter, I educate them about process options and educate them, because I'm biased, of course, about the collaborative process. I educate them about what it entails and how it may be a fit for their family. I realize there are circumstances where collaborative may not be available or a fit, but I'm of the mindset that every family deserves an opportunity to stay out of the court system and to keep the self-determination to work through a process where they can really keep the ability to co-parent, have some semblance of an ability to communicate long after the divorce, and to really be in charge and in control of the legacy of their family and how they treated each other as they went through one of the most difficult and challenging transitions in life.
Absolutely. Let me ask you this. Are there couples that simply cannot do this process because of just not having that open communication?
I'm going to give the typical answer that lawyers give because I have to, and that it depends.
It
My
depends.
experience, I have had, and I've had over 100 collaborative matters that have concluded, but in my experience, it's those tough matters, those matters where people have lost the ability to communicate, where they can't see each other's perspectives, where they're having trouble forming a plan for how they'd like to parent their children. Those are the cases where they have the opportunity to model to their kids that mom and dad can figure it out, as hard as it is. And that's why the collaborative process brings in other expert professionals to work with the legal, financial, and emotional aspects of divorce. People think just because it's a hard case or there are hard circumstances or there are personality disorders or even domestic violence or very, very serious issues, that those are inappropriate for the collaborative process. But I ask people, How is it that the court system is a better option for those families? Why not in a process where we invite the emotion in, where we examine the personality differences, where we look at deep, difficult dynamics within a family system, and we provide an opportunity and a process where people are safe, where it is private, where there are experts at the helm to guide this family through all of those aspects. Why not the collaborative process is where I come from.
That is such an excellent explanation because I feel like people who are looking to maybe an alternative to litigation and come across collaborative divorce, they feel that if they are not currently speaking to a spouse or like you said, a domestic violence, order is out there and they feel like they can't sit across the table from that person, that they immediately wipe this option off their list. But I agree with you. Where there's a will, there's a way, I always feel like. And if they could understand the benefit of being able to retain the power to make the decisions during this process rather than letting a judge that does not know you and will hear your case for a very short period of time and then make a decision that is court ordered and it is the decision. I feel like more people would probably do this.
They should consider it. And like I said, there are certainly instances where I understand it's not available and not appropriate. However, the court system is the emergency room for families. You go there to get patched up and put back out into the world. You're not there to heal any wounds. The court is there to declare a winner and a loser and to dole out the same as a criminal court, if you will, punishment or money and children, and we divide it all, and the court will do that, and the court may do a wonderful job at that. However, my perspective is that that is the absolute last resort. And in my opinion, and based on my over a decade of experience, I have had some of the toughest collaborative matters resolve through this process, where people are able to pick up and transition to the next chapter of their lives without so much pain and losing all their resources and having their kids be drugged through a system where they know everything that's going on with the parents, where the parents leverage and play games with one another and use their attorneys for this traditional combative approach to working through the end of a marriage. I just really, over time, have less tolerance for why that is the go-to, other than it has always been that way. And I'm
I
on
agree.
a mission to at least offer a different perspective so people can know and be educated about this other process that is out there that works.
I loved your passion for this. Okay, before we jump into the craziest divorce story that you're going to tell us about, I always like to just talk about a little fun fact. I always ask all my guests for a little fun fact. And your fun fact did not surprise me per se, but then again it did. You said that you are a classically trained singer. Which I can see you doing that. Now, when you say that, does that mean opera? What does that mean?
Yes, so I have a classical background, and one could call me an opera singer, although that's not my profession, obviously. But I have a voice that resembles an opera singer, and that is the tone and tenor and timbre of my voice. So at a young age, I discovered I could sing, and then I started taking voice lessons and gravitated towards classical art songs and opera. And eventually I I went to college to be a vocal music performance major, and I ended up minoring in vocal performance because I had other aspirations and for my career and my life. But it is a big part of my past and how I think, and I think musicians think in a certain analytical way, and that's always supported my legal career. So I'm grateful for not only the analytical side of being a singer, also the passion that it gives me for the arts and supporting that side of my brain as well.
That is amazing. So instead of being an attorney, I could have gone to Broadway and seen you up on the stage.
Yes, somewhere out there. You never
I
know.
love
Could
that.
happen in the next chapter of my life.
Exactly. I love that. I love that so
Thanks.
much. All right, let's jump into the real reason that we do this podcast. We talk about the craziest divorce story, and then you suggest to give ways of how that people may be able to dodge those divorce disasters. So I'm just going to let you take it and let you share with us.
Okay. So the craziest divorce story is one I have heard time and time and time again. So picture two people, they meet, spring break, year of college, they court each other, they fall in love, they become engaged, they marry, they start a family, they go through all the trials and tribulations of life and a relationship and the ebbs and flows of a relationship. And 45 years go by. And we could talk about all the in betweens, but it really doesn't matter. For the sake of this story, and you know, every story has at least three sides, one person decides that they no longer want to be married. And what do? They ask their friends, they look in the phone book, they look online, they go around, they search Facebook and other places for what to do. They hire a divorce attorney. They meet with them, they hire them, and they turn their lives over to an attorney and say, please handle this. And the other person in the relationship does the same. And before either person knows it, a lawsuit is filed. They end up in depositions. They're turning over a lot of documents. They're paying a lot of money. Their children are searching on the internet and they find their names in these public records that have been filed, and sometimes salacious details of what has gone on in the relationship. 18 to 24 to you fill in the blank of however many more months later, a stranger in a black robe tells them how they're going to divide their stuff, what's going to happen with the kids, who pays for what. And they have this order that lays that out in words, and they are expected to follow it for the rest of their lives. And that really is the craziest divorce story I've ever heard, because it starts with the consultation and going to an attorney and turning the life over to an attorney to handle it. And in my opinion, it's crazy to me because I think people need to start from the goal. Nobody ever says when they come into an attorney's office, you know, I want to pay you the most money. I want to have the worst experience. I want to be asked the most disgusting questions and have to answer them under oath. And I want my children to be in pain from all of this. Could you deliver that to me? A traditional attorney, and I'm generalizing, would never say yes. However, at the end of the process, that may very well be the outcome. That may very well be the divorce story that is the legacy that lasts with the family. And that's why I think it's crazy, because there is a process out there where, even though it will be difficult, even though children will still have to go through the process, even though resources will still have to be allocated to this process, documents will still have to be turned over. At no point will one person be labeled a winner and another person labeled a loser. At no point will a child be forced to testify under oath. At no point will anyone out there tell people what they have to do with their resources and their assets and their debts and their income. And that's why I think the collaborative process takes this crazy divorce story and puts it in a context where there's self-determination, where there is a level of control, where people can work with the past and work with the hurts of the past, but also find a way to leave that in the past and go forward with their lives and transition to a new chapter where maybe, just maybe, there may be a little bit of healing, a better pattern of communication, a way to show up at the college graduation and the wedding and the grandbaby and be there for the grandbabies with a little less angst, a little less pain, a little less resentment towards the other person for going through a really hard process. And that's why I am a part of the collaborative divorce process. Because any story that I tell you, while the facts themselves might sound crazy, the end result is never crazy because it was determined by the people themselves with the guidance of professionals who have the wheel, who have done this many times, who care and support all of the people going through the process and legitimately want the best for them.
You are like a snake charmer. Honestly, I've been through a divorce myself. I never believed, I mean that in the nicest way when I said you're a snake charmer. I never believed that we could go through the collaborative process. But to listen to you, I'm like, I wish we would have done that. Of course, it wasn't as big a thing then, but it was definitely in that time period when you were transitioning and starting, your place, your company. But I love that because so actually collaborative divorce, the process is actually a way to dodge a divorce disaster of going through a normal divorce process of hiring an attorney and going through litigation. That's basically what you're saying, right?
Yes, and I consider hiring an attorney, a litigator, and going through the court process to be the abnormal way, whereas
Right.
relating to one another as people and relying on a team of professionals to help you through it with sharing information and having all of the cards on the table so you can see them all and work with all of them and have your own attorney so you have guidance, but have neutral professionals also work with the couple to help them with parenting and dividing the assets and working with cash flow and budgets and all of that is the intelligent way, is the reasonable way, is the normal way to go through the ending of a marriage. And I'd even go so far as to say that it should be the first choice. And I think there's the misconception out there that the collaborative process is only available to spouses who trust each other. Tell me, what spouse trusts the other in going through a divorce? That's why you're going through a divorce. It's the how. How do we relate to one another? How do we work with the mistrust within the relationship? Do we turn that over to a judge and spill all the stories and air all the dirty laundry and have it all determined by a judge who's credible and who's not, who's telling the truth and who's lying and all of that? Or do we work with the dynamic that we have, the mistrust between the people in a way that will still allow them both to come out of the process as unscathed as one can be going through one of the most difficult, challenging, and hurtful process and transitions in their lives?
Now, let me ask you a question. For anyone listening to this, that this is the first time they have ever heard about collaborative divorce, and I would dare say Most people have not heard of collaborative divorce, to be honest. How does it work? Does both attorneys have to be trained in collaborative divorce, or could one spouse have you, let's say, and the other one is just a traditional attorney that's not trained in collaborative divorce? How does the whole process work?
Am I still with you?
Yes, 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 sure.
Sorry, my computer went out for a second.
No problem.
So let me back up and share that collaborative divorce has been around since the 90s, and North Carolina has a law in the family law section of the chapter of the statutes on collaborative divorce. It has been around for 22 years in our law, and it is an alternative pathway to avoid litigation that requires a written commitment by the spouses that they will never threaten to or go to court. It requires two attorneys, one to represent one person and the other to represent the other. And it requires voluntary disclosure of documents that are otherwise needed to figure out the asset debt division and the cash flow situation and spousal support and child support and all of those things.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, it's not prescribed. And so in a practice group like I'm a part of, the Charlotte Collaborative Divorce Professionals, and at the state level, the North Carolina Collaborative Attorney Network, we come up with best practices among professionals. And while it's certainly preferred that an attorney is trained in the collaborative process and has gone through the higher level training to have that shift in our mindset away from being the aggressive, gamesmanship litigation attorney to this higher level evolved attorney who's going to guide their client through this process, that's not required. And I think anyone who aspires to work within this framework should do it. I'm a mentor of a lot of attorneys who are interested in transitioning into this work, and I support them even when they're not trained.
Okay, I did not know that, because I honestly thought that both had to be trained in the collaborative divorce process.
It's best. They should, because we've all had a mental shift away from, the positional bargaining that we're taught as attorneys. We are working within interest-based negotiations. We're trying to really hear each other and use language that is not so steeped in the law. And we have a lot of creative problem-solving techniques that are learned through high-level trainings. I can't even count how many trainings I've had in the last 15 years that have opened my mind up and up and up to be able to have the ability to think about this process and have all of the tools and skills that are necessary to be a high level practitioner in this field. But I certainly encourage those that don't have that to seek out trainings and guidance and mentorship from those of us who are passionate about the process, because it's available to any attorney who wants to practice in this way. It just
That's
takes
amazing.
a shift.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, tell me the difference. I hear this a lot. Tell me the difference between a collaborative divorce attorney and then a lawyer that kind of practices or wants to have a collaborative divorce. Does that make sense? Does that question make sense?
So the difference between, let's say, going through the collaborative divorce process and working collaboratively. Is that a fair
Yes, that's exactly what I
reframe
mean.
of the question?
Yes, ma'am.
So I think a lot of people aspire to work collaboratively. They use that word as an adjective, it can be an adverb. That's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about working just cooperatively. We're talking about a formal process with a capital C called the collaborative divorce process, where the couple signs a written participation agreement committing themselves to full transparency, to confidential proceedings, to respecting each other through the process, to keeping their children's sensibilities at the forefront, to working with a financial neutral to gather documents, to assess the finances, and to help them generate options for resolving all of the matters between them. And also working with a divorce coach to help them with communication issues, to help them with a parenting plan, to help them have an agenda for each meeting and walk them through the meetings where they're going to be looking at creative options for resolving all of the issues that come up in a divorce.
That makes a lot of sense. And I feel like a lot of attorneys do use the collaborative approach, not the collaborative divorce process approach, but just want to for the both sides to be able to work collaborative so that everyone can get along, basically. But that is extremely different from the process of what you are saying. So if people are liking this and are out there actively looking perhaps for an attorney that does the collaborative divorce process, they need to make sure that when they use the word that the attorney understands exactly what they're looking for if this is something that interests them.
Yes, and that goes back to your question about working with a collaboratively trained attorney. And to me, that's really important. I didn't want to foreclose the opportunity for attorneys to have mentorship and find other ways to learn about this process. But I think it's incredibly valuable to hire an attorney who's devoted themselves to out of court work, because it's really hard, I think, to jump into litigation and take positions and aggressively cross-examine a spouse and make arguments just based on the law and present the highest and best facts of your client on a Tuesday and then drop all of that and go over here on a Wednesday and try to use collaborative language to drop the word custody in favor of parenting and do the things that collaborative attorneys are trained to do in order to help the family move through the process as opposed to, win over here. So I really believe strongly that a collaborative attorney should be in that lane and
I
only that lane.
agree.
That's my personal view, but I recognize and understand there are other considerations and business models and reasons why attorneys may want to do it all. I respect that, certainly. But I very much believe that people who are devoted to this process can deliver and deliver a full team approach because we've spent the time to hone the relationships with people like you by bringing in CDRE on the front end and know why that's so important, because we've been through a process time and time again. So we know when it comes to selling the marital home or someone buying a new one, that you are the person who can lend that expertise in a process like collaborative.
Right. No, I agree with you, and you make a very good case for at least looking at the option of the collaborative divorce process. So I appreciate that. Is there anything before ending up, is there anything we didn't discuss that you would like to put out there, or are we good?
No, I'd say that I try to help people frame how they want to go through a divorce by thinking of it this way. I'm inspired by so many, going back to me being a classically trained musician, I'm informed by music and by other fields that sometimes give me a way to analogize to divorce. And so I would say that in any divorce, there's going to be a crescendo of conflict. And one of my favorite analogies is one that Daniel Kahneman made. He's a psychologist and a Nobel Prize winning economist. He's known for his work in behavioral economics, sorry. And he gave an example of going to a beautiful concert and you are lost in the music and everything has such a beautiful sound and resonance, and you're having a beautiful moment, and then suddenly near the end of the program the cymbals crash and the drums fall over and everything makes this really dissonant, ugly sound. And he explains it in terms of there being an experiencing self and a remembering self. And that the critical part of any story is how the story ends. So the only thing you're going to remember from that concert is not the first hour and a half of it where it was beautiful and resonant and everything was pleasant, but you're going to remember those cymbals crashing and the dissonance of it and how abrupt that was and abrasive that was. And the point of that is that all we have going forward is our memory and our memories of an experience. And I ask parents when I meet with them, or a couple, even if they don't have parents, what kind of divorce story do you want to tell in 10 years, in 20 years? And as hard as it is to go through a divorce, do you want to be proud of how you went through the process? We all have things in a relationship where we don't feel proud of ourselves, or we're facing really challenging circumstances and things are painful or hard, and we do things to each other that we regret, of course. But in any divorce, there is an opportunity to work through the conflict, to perhaps, just perhaps, have some healing and some hope for the future. So while we can't take away the pain, we can't extract it, we can't extract the stress, we can't always fully diffuse the conflict, but we can choose how to go through the process. And that's why I encourage people to keep a very open mind about what process they choose when they go through a divorce.
Excellently said. That was really, really good. I can't thank you enough for being on here today. I really feel like this will bring this process to light to a lot of people that maybe didn't know about it. And I think you explained it so very well. I am going to be putting up all your contact information, but tell us where people can find you.
They can find me on my website, www.kingcollaborativelaw.com. My email is irene@kingcollaborativelaw.com, and they can contact me there. My phone number is 704-343-1995. They're welcome to call me. I am available and excited to keep educating the public, and I'm so grateful that you are doing this podcast and helping people dodge divorce disasters.
Thank you. I'm thoroughly enjoying it. Well, thank you so much, and we will definitely speak soon, okay?
Okay.
Thanks. This podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. The information contained herein is not legal advice. If you need legal advice, please seek an attorney.